I am back for more Top Cut Decklist reviews. We are doing all three nationals at one time. That means we have 56 Decklist reviews. Now I did, I think 19 yesterday and I have 37 today. The way I'm doing this is I'm going symbol by symbol and character by character. So yesterday I did all symbols except for 3, meaning that today we have chaos, good, and the earth symbols to review all of the lists for. Now, it might surprise you that those 3 symbols had 37 deck lists between them of the 56, but they have been dominant for a solid year plus now, and nothing is changing there. Now, the faces of the symbols have changed. We've seen Amajiki become the new face of Chaos, we've seen Overhaul become the new face of Earth, and we've seen Mirio become the new face of Good. So it's same tricks, new characters being put at the head of the decks. But let's jump straight into it with the Chaos symbol. On the Chaos symbol, we had 11 players top cut. Let me see here. Sorry, I've got my notes. We had 5 Amajiki, 3 Tokoyami, All Might 7, Kota, and All for One. Let's start out with the interesting ones. All Might 7, Kota, and All for One. Then we'll jump into Tokoyami, and then we'll finish out with Amajiki before we head off to the good symbol. So on All Might 7, we had Alexander Nelson getting 16th place at the Europe Nationals, or the EU Nationals. And this is, to me, I think a very underrated character. I played All Might 7 quite a bit before One with Nature got banned and before Undaunted Raid got released, and then I've pretty much stopped playing this character. But he is still very, very strong, and especially in a meta where the top decks in the game very much do not want to be committed, right? Like Mirio is counting on his face for defense, Nomu, Recovery Girl, Overhaul to some extent really wants to be able to block from his stage. So I think that makes him pretty underrated. It's pretty easy to block 3 times. You know, even against a Mirio, you can just hold 2 low blocks and a mid block. You know, your mids are always going to be good no matter what zone Mirio calls out. And it's always going to feel good to block with a mid block Ice Storm. And most everything is doing 6 damage so that we can then respond with All Might 7 to draw 2 cards if it deals. And then we get this incredible combo with Award the Victor to where if it deals damage, you can put it on top of your deck. Your next check gets 2. And this and your character have the same response step. So you get to choose the order in which they go. So for example, you can hit someone with a 12 damage Indiscriminate Shock, use Award the Victor, stack your deck with Indiscriminate Shock, use your character, draw your Indiscriminate Shock. Now you're playing it with +2 to your check. Now it feels like you're Tokoyami here, you know? Like, it's, you know, like the Summon Dark Shadow +3 to your check. Here we're getting 2, and we're just getting to pick up and replay the Indiscriminate Shock as a finisher. I also really like this Spiral Blast move. You know, the thing that really holds back Indiscriminate Shock and Spiral Blast is the fact that they're 3 speed, and All Might 7 covers up those weaknesses by adding 2 speed to them. And then Spiral Blast, you can discard a momentum, echo it, and then after it echoes, okay, somebody watching this video needs to comment below, because who knows the rules a little better than me, because I'm pretty sure you echo goes after the attack resolves and Award the Victor is after it deals damage. So I'm pretty sure you can echo the Spiral Blasts, stack it with Award the Victor, and then draw it with All Might 7, and then play it again and echo it again and turn 1 attack into 4. Not 100% sure on that, so if you do know the answer to that, put it in the comments, because I definitely should have asked that in the rules Discord before I started this video, but it's too late now, and I think that's a pretty fascinating interaction. Frigid Heatwave is great in this character, 7 speed, poke attack, and you're going to be drawing 2, and then you can even draw 2 more in your character. Pretty soon you're like a 10-hander on this crazy string. Nejire Wave gets to become huge later in the game, and you're getting to stun 3. Electric Jolt is not arranged, and it's not going to deal 6 damage. That doesn't really matter. You don't care too much about the speed of Electric Jolt. It's just getting this into your momentum for the selective committal. As far as the foundation base here, the main one that really surprised me was Ambush Tactics being at a 4 of. I suppose this says, hey, listen, if you don't block my first attack, then I get to draw 2 cards. Like if it's a Kraken for 6 damage, right? Then I get to use my character to draw 2. If you do block my first attack, everything's getting +1 damage, and that's going to make things like Single Spiral get to 6 damage for my character. And then it also gets this reduce your attack speed to 0. Your next attack gets 2 speed. Your next check to play a card gets +1. That's pretty interesting. I'm wondering how often that was actually used, or if ambush tactics was mostly for the +1 damage of the bottom enhance. But I'm pretty sure this is a foundation that has not seen top cuts this year. So very fascinating to see it being played at a 4X by Alexander. And that is going to do it for Chaos All Might 7. Let's jump into Chaos Kota over here from Alex in the Oceania region. And of course, Kota is going to be drawing based off of the ally cards in his card pool. And he's also going to be getting to commit and make ally cards not count towards progressive. And here we see Alex really leaning into Agile Drop, just discarding 2 non-attack cards to go and grab an attack that you get from your discard pile. So you get to really kind of guarantee Kota's card draws actually getting you attacks. He's using a lot of giant bite detention just because Kota's not adding damage on his face. And so these are getting to be 7 damage, and everything is really a high attack, which is also going to lend itself to Home Run Comet being the finisher of this deck. You can really easily see how you could have like 7 attacks, ally attacks in your card pool because they all don't count towards progressive. And then you play a Home Run Comet, and this thing gets to like powerful 8 and generates its own momentum. And so even though Home Run Comet's not an ally, it's being used here as the finisher. Let me see. Oh, and Indiscriminate Shock is also being used as a finisher. So we have the 1 Indiscriminate Shock and the 2 Home Run Comets. Those are your non-allies. And then, of course, you have Command Pigeon Flock, Dark Shadow Ruin, and so on and so forth. I don't really see any crazy foundations here that I wasn't expecting. Of course, you always get the Chaos symbol just has these amazing spam foundations. We are not using any copies of Release. That's an interesting decision. I think, you know what's interesting is that Alex is not playing any copies of Release. And if we jump to the next Chaos deck that I was going to look at, Scott on All for One, he is also not playing any copies of Release. So we have 2 Chaos decks that made top cuts that are completely ignoring Release, which I think is one of the best foundations in the game. In fact, this is making me so confused that I just have to come to, okay, yeah, it does have the Chaos symbol. All right, I just had to double check for myself because it was like, well, wait a second, where's Release? Yeah, very interesting deck building decision there. I suppose that does make sense. You know, All for One is getting damage for the foundations in his stage, and Release would be blowing up his stage, something that All for One doesn't want to be done. What I really like about this deck is we are really leaning into echo attacks with 4 Double Trouble and 4 Spiral Blasts. And then we are playing 4 of All for One's massive dunk attack ultimate combination. And this goes really well with like foundations like Helping Tomura. After you add a card to your momentum, add this card to your momentum. So you add Tomura to your momentum, you use ultimate combination, and then you're just going to build it right back in. So this is basically like a free +4 damage on ultimate combination. And then we are running Runaway at a 4x. So this card, you know, I think is very, very strong right now in the meta, but most decks are running it like a 1 or 2x and maybe putting it in their sideboard. But here we have Scott just saying that he wants to see it all the time on defense, and he's putting it in at a 4x. A fascinating decision there. We got Lemillion of the Big Three just to add some damage, I suppose. You get the speed for Double Trouble, which, you know, its weakness is that it's so slow, and then you're adding on the damage to Spiral Blast, 0 Gravity Lift, making this a 7 damage throw, which is nice. Vast Hybrid to send to our momentum. Of course, we're always going to have a ton of foundations in our momentum to build with ultimate combination. So very nice to finally see All for One make a top cuts. If you go back and watch my last tier list that I did, I put All for One in the B+ tier, to where I said I would not be surprised if he made top cuts, but I would be surprised if he went pretty far in top cuts. But I said, if Capture Evildoers ever gets banned, then I think this character becomes much, much better, because that's one of his main weaknesses, is just how much Capture Evildoers hurts this guy. But congratulations to Scott. I think this might be the first time All for One has made it to the top cuts of a major event. And that is going to do it for our 3 singletons in the Chaos symbol. Now we have 3 Tokoyamis and 5 Amajiki. Now, 2 Tokoyamis were from the Oceania region, James and Zane, and I believe that these decks are card for card the exact same. Now, that's just from my memory. I'm not 100% sure, so you might just double check me on that. And I apologize to James and Zane if that's wrong, but I'm going to treat it as the same deck and just look at it at the same time. And what these decks are doing is running 4 Summon Dark Shadows and 4 Manifest. So this Amajiki action is actually extremely powerful in Tokoyami because Dark Shadow Ruin says actions don't count towards progressive, and then you're going to use Manifest to kick your attacks into your momentum. Not only does that get you a momentum, not only does it draw a card, but now that attack is effectively not counting towards progressive anymore. So if this deck finds Dark Shadow Ruin, it is just wheels up. Tokoyami can play all of the attacks that he finds in his hand. Manifest is going to help him find even more attacks. So this action coming in huge for this deck. We even saw it used sometimes. Like there was a game, either James or Zane, I don't know, it was being streamed. I think it was the first round of Top Cuts. And they played a Dark Shadow Ruin, and it was pretty obvious the rival was going to block it and that they weren't going to be able to have any future gas on that turn. So they just went ahead and played Manifest and aborted the attack. They just put the Dark Shadow Ruin in momentum and drew a card, basically saying, I can see this attack is not going to deal damage. Why don't I go ahead and filter my hand for something else and just go ahead and get the momentum? Because if it was blocked, it wouldn't be going to momentum. So fascinating decision there. Other than that, I don't see any major surprises from the list. Let's jump into the other Chaos Tokoyami, which is over here, Daniel Nelson. By the way, I believe Daniel was at the HLC last year and that he played Tokoyami. At least I'm remembering like a top 8 match between him and Keenan Meadows. I think that was Daniel. And if it was, then Daniel has made back-to-back HLCs. And so congratulations to Daniel, and he's doing it on Chaos Tokoyami again. And here, he's also playing Summon Dark Shadow and Manifest. But what I really like about this deck is it has some spice. It has inverted Knife Throw at a 4x. So typically, the only way this goes to your momentum face up is if it, after you check this card, add it to your momentum face up. Should be noted, add this card to your momentum face up is not a static. So if this attack deals damage, it still goes to your momentum face down. The only way it goes face up is if you check it and then you commit a foundation and use that responsibility. But this deck is once again using Manifest, which says add a card from your card pool to your momentum face up. So we get to play Inverted Knife Throw, play Manifest, draw a card, put Inverted Knife Throw into our momentum, and then from our momentum, discard a card to play this attack as your next form. So when you see an Inverted Knife Throw and a Manifest is basically like a second copy of Inverted Knife Throw. You're just going to get to play it again. Very, very cool interaction there. And because of that, doesn't look like Daniel needs as much card draw. So Frigid Heatwave is all the way down at a 1x. And typically we see this card much, much higher. And he's also playing the single Phantom Threat, which even though he's probably not going to be changing the zone on Phantom Threat, although he could with like Self-Assured, right? Tokoyami is just going to give this thing a ton of +1 damage, and then you can always respond for the +1 speed. So it feels like Phantom Threat is in here primarily just for the bottom response on how fast it's going to get, and it's pretty solid starter. And if you have Self-Assured, it's just going to self-clear itself, right? But then I guess you couldn't Manifest Inverted Knife Throw because you've used the top enhance. And we're also playing 2 copies of Award the Victor. So very similar to the Chaos All Might 7, even though we don't quite get that interaction, we're still playing Award the Victor to clear our card pool and just guarantee our checks. So fascinating list here from Daniel. And here we see the release, okay? For a second, I thought I was going crazy, like earlier when the releases were missing, and just thinking that it wasn't on Chaos. All right, that is going to do it for Chaos Tokoyami. Now we have 5 Amajiki lists to look at, and we had 4 at US Nationals and 1 in EU Nationals. Now, Amajiki did much better as a character than would have been expected for how many players played him. Like his ratio of people that got into Top Cuts to how many people played him was very, very impressive. But unfortunately, all 5 Tokoyamis lost in the first round of Top Cuts. So Amajiki did not carry anybody to grabbing an HLC invite. Let's just start off with Benhin. This is the Amajiki that I played in round 1. And Ben came within one bad check of eliminating me and getting his HLC invite. And what I like about this list is we're 4Xing Ice Storm. I think this card is incredible, especially in Amajiki. You know, you get to give it the damage from Amajiki, and then even if they reset the damage, you can always use Powerful 3, and it's got your Breaker 2, which is so integral to a 7-hander, staying alive, getting to see that Breaker 2 block early. Sorry, I've got like a ray of light coming in over my face here, but I don't have time to fix that at the moment. But yeah, Amajiki's kind of interesting in that he feels a little like Jiro to me, like Air Jiro, to where all of the lists look like very similar, but they each might be excluding one certain attack and including a different attack, right? But they're all pulling from like the same 10 different attacks. It's just some players prefer these 7, other players prefer these 7. Same thing with foundations. We see very, very similar foundations with just slight adjustments. So the main adjustments I see here from Ben is that we're not putting any Seafood Slugger into the main board, and we are putting 1 copy of Blitz Rush. This is just insane deadlock for Amajiki. Your rival commits 1 foundation for each card in your momentum. That can sometimes just be like stun 7, stun 8, and it's going to get 2 damage for each card in my momentum, and I can give it more damage from Amajiki. You can see how this can get just absolutely nutty very, very quickly. Zero Grav Lift is going to help clear our progressive and let us go on these crazy attack strings. Indiscriminate Shock. You can see just how scary this list can be with the Blitz Rush, Indiscriminate Shock, Ice Storm. There's so many ways that this list just annihilates you. Of course, Amajiki is always going to play a pretty solid number of these 3 foundations. Sunny, their big 3, Broken Psyche, and Vast Hybrid. They're just his absolute core. And then you get the great 0 diffs of the Chaos symbol. This 1 copy of Training with Gunhead, Ben, I actually talked with Ben a little bit after, and he said this came in handy quite a bit because against throw decks, like he played a Throw All Might 2, then this is like a 5th copy of Broken Psyche to take the damage down to 2. And it's also just nice to give the speed at times, especially when like Vast Hybrid is adjusting the check and you're typically using this on like your finisher. And sometimes giving 1 speed to your finisher is just all you need. And then this sideboard came into big handy when he played me in the first round of Top Cuts. You know, this Concentrate just absolutely dunks on Capture Evildoers. I imagine it's also very strong against like Future is now. We have the Runaways coming in, the Anti-Voice to make things double. And then you can, you know, if something's double this damage, then it doesn't matter if it's a low or a high, you're still going to get a full block. That's going to be very, very strong against Mirio. So that's Ben's list. Let's jump into Mason's list. And I'm probably going to spend the longest on Ben's list just because Amajiki lists are so similar. I'm just going to try and look at pinpoint the unique decisions made from the other Amajiki lists. So that's one of the benefits of just going character and symbol, is that we can go more quickly through each of these deck lists. And here on Mason's list, some differences that we can see is we have 1 copy of Freezer Burn, and I love this decision. Freezer Burn becomes a broken card, just an extremely unfair card anytime you can get significant damage on this. So there's no better attack, in my opinion, to use Amajiki's once per turn damage pump on than Freezer Burn. You make this thing 10 damage, and then you can just destroy foundations and cancel all rival interactions, non-character I should say, all non-character rival interactions with this attack. Very, very, very strong. And then we've got 1 copy of Cheerful Uppercut for defense, and he has actually taken Blitz Rush to a 2x. So some very interesting decisions around the edges on the attack lineup, although the bulk of it is largely, very Amajiki. And then we got the 1x League of Villains, the 1x Tokoyami in the main board. Tokoyami does get that response. It's not a big deal, but, get to gain 1 health. But it's just a 1 diff that is going to let you draw a card on a future turn and adjust the damage of something, and it checks a 6. But, of course, we got our core 3. Over here, we're playing 1 copy of Surge and 2 copies of Levitate. Levitate is going to help us draw, and Surge is going to... we can give a charged or ranged attack EX2, so you can see how this can come in handy on Indiscriminate Shock when we're going to give it the damage for Committed Foundations. We're going to give it the damage from Amajiki. We're going to flip Surge and give it EX2. We're going to discard a Momentum, and very quickly we're going to have like a 20 speed, 30 damage attack and it's just going to be insane. We got the one copy of Cool and Tough. I am back. Sorry, I had to take a pause there for my voice. I've been on and off sick ever since Dallas, and I've been trying to recover as quickly as possible. That's why my content has kind of slowed down here this last week and a half. But so I just had to go have a few cough drops, drink some water. I think I might just finish the Chaos decks today, or maybe I'll just see how I'm feeling and see if I can push through. But that is going to do it for Mason's List. Like I was saying, I like this one copy of Cool and Tough, solid deadlock, also some solid anti-momentum hate. So let's jump into Barlo's Amajiki list. Now, Barlo was actually in second place after Swiss. It's a little unfair to me that the system, for whatever reason, puts him at spot 32. When he was in second place after Swiss, he was Swiss champ alongside me. And we actually played in round 8, and we purposely took a tie. And then we actually played for real, just for practice, and we actually tied. And one thing I really like about Barlo's list is he is running 2 copies of Inverted Knife Throw. So once again, we see Inverted Knife Throw making it into the attack lineup of a Chaos list. And once again, we're seeing it paired alongside Manifest. So we can Manifest, put this in our momentum, and then just play it again. Very, very solid attack here. Barlo is playing Death Arms Wallop instead of Indiscriminate Shock. Once again, he's not running any copies of Seafood Slugger. He is mainboarding a Decoy Duplicate, and he's mainboarding 2 Villains Defeated. This foundation actually kind of dunked on me during game 2 because I captured Evildoer's card pool cleared, and then I had a Hardened Jab and a Valiant Assault in my hand. I played the Jab, and then I was going to play the Assault to draw 2 more cards and hopefully find the gas needed, because I think I would just needed like 1 more attack to find lethal. And for whatever reason, I didn't look at his stage and realize there was a Villains Defeated, because then he removed my Hardened Jab, and I was no longer able to combo with Valiant Assault. So this one definitely, I have some bad memories of this doing well against me. We are maining the copy of League of Villains, and then on the action side, Barlo's running 3 copies of I Am Here. This is very, very different than the other Amajiki lists. I love I Am Here as an action. You're either getting 3 speed to your attack, or you're getting to just free build a foundation in right away. I love this inclusion here. And then sideboard is pretty similar to Ben's with the Concentrate and the Runaways coming in, second copy of League of Villains, and then a few copies of Battle for the Future. I heard that this came in handy big time for a few different Amajikis against repeated 100% smash, just getting to discard it from the card pool. You know what? The great thing about Battle for the Future is Amajiki is one of the only characters that can actually run this action with a straight face, because he always has the momentum for it. And then it's a hand trap, right? So the overhaul player that's going to play the repeated 100% smash does not see this coming. You hit him with the Battle for the Future and turns over pretty much. And you're going to get to win on the backswing. And last but not least, for U.S. Nationals, we have Michael Buck on Amajiki. And Michael is running a copy of Spiral Blasts. This is an attack that was not in the other lists. And he said this came in handy quite a bit throughout the day, getting to echo this attack. And then he's also running Tentacle Grasp, the 3 difficulty throw, which when it's in momentum, it's also getting the benefit of giving -1 speed, even though it's only 1 speed. This is just a great poke attack. You can just throw all your damage onto it, or it can just be a finisher when it's needed. But we play 0 diffs like Surviving the Final, and this just has that on face. And then we're not running any Blitz Rush, but Michael's instead running Adaptable, which also has like a very similar crazy deadlock enhance, right? Blitz Rush was making your rival commit a foundation for each of your momentum. Adaptable is making your rival lose 1 health for each of your momentum. Either way, with Amajiki, this just becomes insane. Adaptable is going to say, I'm going to flip, you're going to take 8 damage. You know, it's just basically says you're not allowed to go into deadlock against me if I have a solid amount of momentum. And then elsewhere we see another Decoy Duplicate with the 4x Broken Psyche. Of course, we're running solid numbers of these 3 foundations. And then we have our 0 and 1 diffs of the Chaos symbol. And for our last Amajiki, we have Jonathan from the EU region. And Jonathan was the only Amajiki player to run Seafood Slugger in the main board. And he was running 2 copies of this. And it says if it's in your momentum, you're going to get to seal a rival foundation. And then it gets this enhanced if you have more momentum, which your Amajiki, most of the time that's going to be the case. Then you get to destroy a rival asset or add the top card of your deck to your momentum. So nice to see this attack coming in to the main board, whereas the other Amajiki lists were deciding to that Slugger just wasn't providing enough value compared to all of the other value that the Chaos symbol gets access to. And then we're also running Death Arms Wallop instead of Indiscriminate Shock. And really no big surprises to me from the Foundation list. This is a kind of a more slim and trim Amajiki list of 64 cards and perfectly even block zones or perfect symmetry, which I always appreciate that in a deck. And that, 3 copies of Zero Gravity left. So going pretty aggressive on this. You know, we're not just running 1 or 2 copies like some other lists. We're running 3 copies, and then we're 4Xing all the good 4 diffs that Amajiki wants to see. Electric Jolt, Ice Storm, and Claw Stopper. So that is going to do it for me today. My voice has just given me too much of a hard time. I will be back tomorrow to look at the 26 deck lists on the good and earth symbols, and hopefully my voice stays with me to where I can do all of that in one video. But for today, those were your Chaos lists. Which list was the most surprising to you? Or which list was your favorite? I would love to hear about it in the comments. I will see you tomorrow.